Hello and welcome. This is me, Ahmed Reza, and today we have a very special guest among us. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are very delighted to have Ms. Ugochi Daniels, Deputy Director General for Operations of the International Organization for Migrations. And Ms. Daniels is currently visiting Bangladesh, where she is engaging with government leaders, development partners, and communities on some of the most pressing issues of our time, including migration, climate mobility, humanitarian response, and the Rohingya refugee crisis. Bangladesh has emerged as a key global voice on safe, orderly, and regular migration, while continuing to host one of the world's largest refugee populations. As migration patterns evolve due to conflict, climate change, and economic opportunities, international cooperation has become more important than ever. Today, we'll discuss Bangladesh's progress in migration governance, the implementation of the Global Compact for Migration, the protection of migrant workers, climate displacement, humanitarian challenges, and IOM's vision for strengthening its partnership with Bangladesh. So once again, we are welcoming our special guest for today. So Ms. Daniels, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Jamuna Television. How have you been?
Very good, Ahmed, and thank you so much for having me.
Probably it's your second visit in Bangladesh as well.
Absolutely. So glad to be back in Bangladesh after 4 years.
Yeah, so how is everything?
Well, it's been an amazing trip. I've had the opportunity to meet with government officials, UN agencies here in Dhaka. I've been to Cox's Bazar. Today I went to Madripur. So it's been a short visit, an intense visit, but really comprehensive in meeting with a whole range of people and actors, but most important of all, having the chance to interact with the communities and the migrants and those most affected.
Yeah, already you have captured many more experience from this visit, and we will talk about that, and we will have your experience from that visit as well. But at the very beginning, I would like to know about the migration governance, and you know it's very important to talk about. And let's talk about Bangladesh perspective. And you know Bangladesh has made significant progress in migration governance, especially. And so, how do you assess the country's achievements, and how can IOM further support these efforts?
Bangladesh is really an amazing country. It's one of the top countries of origin of migrants around the world. 13 million Bangladeshis live and work abroad. And Bangladesh and the way Bangladesh has managed migration is demonstrates what it means to be a champion. And in fact, Bangladesh is a champion on the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. But they're a champion not just because they say they're a champion, they demonstrate it. And in fact, just 2 days ago, we launched the National Action Plan. Well, the government launched the National Action Plan for implementing the Global Compact on migration. And yes, it's important to launch the plan, but it's more important the actions that the government has identified to advance, promote migration that is regular and to prevent migration that is irregular, recognizing the contribution migration makes to the people, the economy, the society of Bangladesh. So they're a leader domestically, nationally, but they're also a leader globally. And we saw this most recently in New York in May at the International Migration Review Forum, which happens every 4 years when countries come together to talk about how they're going to cooperate on migration, as well as what they have done to advance and implement the Global Compact on migration. And Bangladesh was at the forefront, not only presenting what they have done nationally, but also how they will cooperate with other countries. So Bangladesh is, I really want to appreciate Bangladesh's leadership, commitment, as well as action. As I mentioned, I was in Madripur today, and I saw at the local level with individuals how the government is working with migrants, and often these are migrants from communities with different challenges, but how they are helping them to move regularly, how they're supporting loans for their travel so that they don't have to be exploited or extorted. So from global to national down to local level, Bangladesh is really acting, implementing the Global Compact on migration.
So, Mr. Daniels, when you talk about the Global Compact for Migration, it is very important for Bangladesh perspective. And I would like to know a different perspective. As you know, Bangladesh is implementing the Global Compact for Migration in their National Action Plan, NAP. So what should be the key priorities to ensure it benefits migrants and their families?
So the Global Compact on Migration has 23 objectives. I'm not going to go through all of the 23 objectives, but the new government has as one of its national priorities creating 10 million new jobs. And this includes expanding pathways for Bangladeshi migrants to move regularly. And a key aspect of this is what we call fair and ethical recruitment, so that migrants aren't exploited, as well as reducing the financial costs to migrants on migration, and then ensuring throughout their journey that they are protected. But we also recognize that many migrants are coming back. And today, I keep referring to my visit to Madripoor, I had the opportunity to see the largest reintegration program in the world. Again, another demonstration of how Bangladesh is leading. The largest reintegration program in the world, so that migrants that come back are able to be productive members in the society, contribute to the economy, take care of their families. One other really important area, which is important to focus on, is data, having good data on who is moving, where they're moving to, plans for the government to issue cards to the migrant workers is a key step in this regard. Having documentation, having legal identity. So these are areas to focus on in terms of expanding regular migration, as well as how to counter the practices of traffickers, of smugglers, ensuring that there's good information out there for migrants, as well as how Bangladesh manages its borders to identify possible victims of trafficking or exploitative practices. So all of these are key areas for Bangladesh in implementing the National Action Plan that they really need to, that they've prioritized.
Yeah, address as well. Thank you so much for your words and insights as well. So let's talk about another vital thing and issues which is related with the climate change impact. As you know that Bangladesh is one of the most vulnerable countries regarding the issues of climate impact, and climate change is forcing more people to move. And regarding that perspective, how IOM can support climate affected communities, and what more is needed from the international community as well?
So you're very right in saying that Bangladesh is one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world. I've seen firsthand Bangladeshi families whose homes have been swept away by river erosion 5 times, 6 times. And so it's an issue of how do you help people to adapt to the impact of climate. And we work hand in hand with the government, first in terms of what we call early warning data, so that communities, so that the government can be prepared for dealing with the impact of, for instance, cyclones, flooding, etc., but also livelihood support. Because being able to adapt to the impact of climate for many Bangladeshis means either they have to change their livelihoods or adapt their livelihoods. And you were talking about what the international community can do, because we as IOM support the government on disaster risk reduction, preparedness, climate adaptation, livelihoods, building the resilience of the Bangladeshi people most vulnerable to climate. And we do this with a range of partners, UN family, civil society, etc. But we need the support of the donor community to be able to continue these programs. And there's also a very important role for the international community in all of the discussions around climate and financing for the impact of climate, which they are contributing to, and we encourage them. We thank them for the generous support we've received, but so much more is still needed. And in the case of Bangladesh, Bangladesh is leading the way for its people in terms of mitigating the impact of climate. So it's also support, international support, for the government and people of Bangladesh by the international community.
So let's talk about the labor migration, which is very important for Bangladesh's economy. What more can be done to ensure safe migration, fair recruitment, and better protection for migrant workers?
So I was speaking a bit about this before, and we as IOM, we collect a lot of data on how migrants move, where they move to, what happens to them on their journey. And what we see when migrants move irregularly, particularly Bangladeshis, what we're seeing now, which is very tragic, is an increasing number of Bangladeshis dying in the Mediterranean and being trafficked and smuggled. So one of the first things is information and awareness about how to move regularly and how to avoid being exploited, trafficked, and smuggled. And it was really heartbreaking, the stories that I've heard while I'm here. They have had they've paid enormous amounts of money. I heard $10,000, $20,000, up to $40,000. They have been tortured. They've been kept in prison. They've come back with debt. And yet, to move regularly, to get a visa, get a passport, get a work permit, invest in your skills costs so much less and has a much better outcome. So, first and foremost, getting the information about how to move regularly and how to avoid being exploited and moving irregularly. Having the data, I already spoke about the mechanisms the government is putting in place to have data and access to the migrants. Also linking the migrants to services such as, so they can build skills, services also, as I mentioned, getting a loan so that they can travel once they have a valid work permit, and really focusing on ethical recruitment. These are key areas that the government is already working on to achieve their very ambitious goal of 10 million new jobs. These other areas are, these aspects of ensuring regular migration, reducing irregular migration, will be very, very important. And then a final piece, and I see the efforts that the government is putting in this, is the partnerships and the discussions that they are having in the countries of destination where Bangladeshi migrants go to, whether it's Italy, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, other countries in the Gulf. By definition, migration happens between at least two countries, right? Yeah. So to cooperate to ensure that both countries are deriving the full benefits of migration is very important.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. And Bangladesh is a place where migration cost is, so high, and the migrants' payment is so low. So regarding that perspective, and that we are concerned about the illegal migration as well. And in your visit, you have visited a couple of places like Cox's Bazar and Madaripur. So what are your key priorities to visit over there, and what message you will share to the international community after visiting this?
So from the perspective of Cox's Bazar, all the different stakeholders, whether it's the international system, the Rohingya, the Rohingya community, the government, there's all agreement on the right to return, and the long-term solution is returning. There's also agreement that it is important to return safely, with dignity and orderly, and the importance of building self-reliance for the Rohingya so that when they return, they have the skills they need to rebuild their lives. So the message first of all, to the host communities and the government who have generously been hosting the Rohingya, continued recognition of the generosity of the Bangladeshi people, and then continued support for the government to continue to host the Rohingya community until they are able to safely return home, which is what everybody wants, most of all, the Rohingya themselves. Yeah. And then in Madripur, the takeaway message, and I discussed this when I was there, is that our support to the government, to the people, to the community in Madripur really depends on them making the right choice. Because we can support the government to put everything in place. They need to make the choice to move regularly as opposed to irregularly. And to move regularly costs them much less, is far less risky, and will have better outcomes for them and their community, not to be deceived by the false stories given by traffickers and smugglers. And ultimately, it's about there are good solutions for how to live their life and fulfill their hopes and dreams. Irregular migration is not part of that.
You know, when you talk about Rohingya, and which is crisis for Bangladesh as well, and we are concerned about a couple of things, especially we expect the sustainable repatriation. So another thing, we are concerned about the humanitarian funding, which is under pressure right now. So how do you evaluate this? Is there any system or mechanism to make the international funding more higher, especially for the Rohingya people?
So the situation of humanitarian funding is not specific to the Rohingya people. Humanitarian funding has gone down globally. That is the reality. And that is why investing in self-reliance is so important, rather than continually providing humanitarian assistance, right? Because you keep providing humanitarian assistance, people stay dependent on aid. And yet we know that the funding for that is going down. And that's why it's so important to invest in self-reliance, so that they're not dependent on aid, and they will, as I said earlier, be able to rebuild their lives when they go back home. There's also, when I was discussing with our sister UN agencies in Cox's Bazar, also recognition that the host community needs support as well. I was very pleased I could visit a soap factory where the Rohingya community and the host community both are working in the soap factory. So there's also the importance of support to the host communities, and that we can do it in a way that supports what we call social cohesion, which is basically ensuring that there's no tension between the two communities. So let's not forget the importance of supporting the host community as well, with not humanitarian assistance, but assistance for self-reliance.
Thank you. So this is my last question to you, and which is related about the Bangladeshi people or Bangladeshi government. That do you have any special message for Bangladeshi people and the government of Bangladesh? If you have, you can share.
Yes, of course. So IOM has been a long-standing partner of the government of people of Bangladesh. One of the key messages of my visit here is that we will continue to stand in support of the government and the people of Bangladesh. We know that this is a particularly difficult times in terms of the funding available, but we are not, we remain undeterred in that regard, and we will continue to seek other sources of funding. We continue to rely on our generous donors, but the reality is, as I mentioned, funding has gone down. So we are also expanding those that we reach out to. We're diversifying our partners, and we will do everything, we will continue to do everything as IOM, as a member of the UN here in Bangladesh, to ensure that migration is a force for good, that it will always be safe, regular, and orderly, that Bangladeshi migrants can live and work abroad safely. Bangladeshi migrants who return are able to reintegrate sustainably. Bangladeshis who don't want to migrate but who want to stay here and build their livelihoods are able to do so. IOM will continue to be your long-standing partner. And yes, I know that in many discussions, migration can be politicized, but let's remember that migration is overwhelmingly regular, and migration is contributing in the countries of origin, transit, and destination. So let's cooperate, let's work together, because the world has been shaped by migration hundreds of years back. It will continue to be. So let's work together to make sure that it's safe, orderly, and dignified. And IOM will be on that journey with Bangladesh and the people of Bangladesh.
Thank you so much, Ms. Daniels, for sharing your valuable speech, insights, words, and thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us and to speak with us during your visit to Bangladesh. Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. It's a pleasure.
Same here. Thank you so much, and thank you to our viewers for watching this. And stay with Jamuna Television for more news updates and in-depth conversation. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.